Dispatchers help callers on the worst days of their lives. For over 25 years, we've been there. A silent partner in millions of calls thanks to our redundant and diverse networks that ensure call delivery. Today, cities are bigger, traffic more congested, and the challenge is more complex. But you're never alone, because InDigital is quietly improving, implementing, and driving the next generation of 911, so you're supported in every situation. Make the switch at indigital.net.
Have you ever met a 911 professional and asked, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Well, here's your answer. I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler. I tried to call you the day you committed suicide by driving your car into a tree. Blue face, cold to the touch. I helped you with CPR after you found your infant face down, not breathing. It messed me up. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You were with me from the beginning, Grandma. 27 years later, I took the 911 call when you died. How fitting to be there for me in the beginning, and I was there for you in the end. I miss you, Grandma. I am 911. This is but a glimpse into the world of emergency dispatch. But what is it really like to answer a call during someone's nightmare? What is the impact on the first responder answering the call? Available on Amazon or where you purchase your favorite books and ebooks. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned. So the car screeches up, and we hear this. We're both alert, at attention, as to whatever we're about to encounter. We hear the door open to the car, and a woman is screaming as she's coming out of the car. The door slams, and then the door opens to the PD, and she runs in. Now, as I said, everyone knew the chief, and the chief knew everyone. And as she's yelling, he kind of grabs her by the arms to stabilize her because she is just flailing. She's hysterical as she's yelling, "I found him. I found him."
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be episode 600 of Within the Trenches podcast. True stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast. Thank you all very, very much for everything. It has been, it's been an amazing journey, and it doesn't end here, but holy moly. Yeah, it is episode 600. We have a lot to cover today. And this episode is going to be a little different because today's guest is me. So let me break it down. Originally, what I wanted to do, and I had been talking about this for a few weeks, what I wanted to do was I wanted to have my good friends Aaron and Cinnamon of After the Tones Drop podcast on in celebration of this epic episode, along with a very special guest. And that special guest was going to be my very first and so far only my forever co-host, Whitney. But sometimes
life gets in the way and things are busy. I've been traveling around, teaching, going to conferences. Both Aaron and Cinnamon doing the same thing. They also have their their jobs as well, and Whitney too. Whitney is the deputy director of the center where I used to work with her at Allegan County Central Dispatch. She's also a mom and a wife and is very busy as well. So when things like this happen, you have to call an audible. And so I'm going to change this up. So instead, what I wanted to do with all of you is simply have a chat with you and reflect on this entire journey, share some insight. And so there's no actual interview. There's going to be a few clips, but there's no interview piece in this episode. There's no guest. Again, the guest is myself. I want to talk to you about how things started, what has happened since the beginning, and where all of this is going. And the reason I wanted to do this too is because, as I said, this is episode 600. So if you are just jumping in, you might not even know how any of this started, because that's a lot of episodes to go through. That is a lot. And some people start at the beginning, some people don't. But I will say right off the bat, if you start in the beginning, hang in there, because I promise you the audio gets better. Well, I'll talk to you about that here in a minute so you know, excuse me, exactly what I mean, okay? But this is also kind of a preview of a new podcast I'm starting, and that's Imagine Listening, which you will hear a little bit about later. But that is going to have no interviews at all. It is just going to be storytelling. Within the Trenches podcast, however, remains, and this is the interview piece where there's so many things that you find out going back and forth in the interview with guests and such. But where did it all begin? So let's go back in time. What I love about this as well is throughout my journey with this show, because this started in the end of 2012, the beginning of 2013. So I've been doing this for a long time, and there were some episodes where it was just me talking about my experience and some of the calls that I had taken. So it's really cool to kind of go back and do it this way for this episode, because a lot of the other big episodes have been with guests or a live audience. I believe I started that with episode 300. That was at the IPSTA conference in Illinois, Springfield, I believe. And I did Imagine Listening there. And I recorded just a little bit of video. I might have gone live on Facebook actually and said, we are about to get started with an epic episode 300. And we have a live audience. And I moved the camera around and showed the entire audience. And it was a packed room, standing room only. But I like that this is going to be a little more intimate. Episode 600. So let's go back in time for those who don't know the history of all of this. Because, like everyone else, I wasn't always a known professional. I have a total of, over 2 decades of being in public safety. Never thought that I would be where I'm at today, doing what I do for a living. But I will say right off the bat, I love it, and I would not change it for anything. So much has happened. So we go back in time to me being in Florida. Leading up to being in Florida, I was going through a lot of different things. And I'm a firm believer that sometimes, or maybe not just sometimes, but there is a time where we all hit rock bottom, whatever version of rock bottom that might be. And that's where I was, trying to figure out where I was going to go, trying to figure out where life was going to take me. Because as I said, I was going through so many things. And even though I was 19, still have a lot of life to live. I felt like things were just crumbling, and where was I going to go from there? And I remember when I decided to leave, spoke to a cousin of mine, told him what I was going to do, because I just needed to start out fresh. I needed to figure some things out. And my mom and my younger sisters and my grandmother, they lived in Florida. And I thought, I'll just go out there and just take a couple weeks to figure out what I'm going to do next. Because I knew that if I stayed, it was not going to be good. Things I was doing, the people I was hanging out with, going back and forth with my dad, it just was not a good place for me. And I remember when I left, I turned on the radio. And I don't know about all of you who are watching or listening to this right now, how you feel about music. But for me, music means a lot. I have a deep connection with it, whether it be the rhythm, the sound, the lyrics. I connect. And that day, with everything that was going on, the decision that I made, I turned on the radio and this song came on. It had just started. And I felt it. And I felt those lyrics. And the song is called Alive. And it's by a band called P.O.D. And when I heard the song, like I've always enjoyed that song. I loved it. But the lyrics meant that much more, especially with what I was going through and what I had decided to do. And if you've never heard the song, please make sure to check it out. Because the lyrics, right off the bat in the beginning, say everything. And I'll just say some of those right now. I won't sing it, but I will read the lyrics. I have them up right here. And it says, "Every day is a new day. I'm thankful for every breath I take. I won't take it for granted. So I learn from my mistakes. It's beyond my control. Sometimes it's best to let go, whatever happens in this lifetime. So I trust and love. You've given me peace of mind. I feel so alive. For the very first time, I can't deny you. I feel so alive. And it repeats. For the very first time, I feel so alive, and I think I can fly. I can feel right now how I felt then. I've got goosebumps. It just made so much sense. The rest of the song makes so much sense as well. But those lyrics just right off the bat in the beginning says everything. So I end up going to Florida, and what I thought was going to be just a 2-week stay ended up being about 4 years that I was there. And I remember while I was there, when I got into that first month of being there, my mom ends up coming in and she goes, "You think you might wanna look for a job?" And I said, "Yeah, yes." Now this is in Frostproof, Florida, and yes, this is a real city. Frostproof, okay? Within Polk County, and I'm just speaking from my experience, but anytime I have seen stories on social media about hashtag Florida man or Florida woman, it's usually in Polk County. So I'm in that county and I'm looking for a job. Up until that point, I had retail management experience. One of those stores that I worked for was Blockbuster. And no, I'm not the reason that Blockbuster no longer exists. But that's what I was looking for. And I couldn't find anything. I'd been looking and looking and looking and nothing. And one day my mom ends up saying to me, your cousin's husband was having lunch with the chief of police recently. And he mentioned to him that they were hiring 911 dispatchers. You should try it out. What? This is pretty much what my response was to my mom was, I have no idea what 911 dispatch does other than, take phone calls and send help. I don't know that I could do that. It sounds crazy. Plus, up until that time, all I had for any type of 911 experience was a show that I loved growing up, and it was Rescue 911 with William Shatner. And again, I loved that show, but I didn't know anything about 911. And also, at the end of almost every episode, the dispatcher gets to meet the people that they help. Well, when you get into 911, you realize that is not exactly the case. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people do get a chance to meet the people that they help, and that's amazing. But it doesn't always happen is the thing. So I remember going in because I had put in an application and I got a call back for the interview, and I was so nervous, super nervous. Go through the entire process. At the end, I'm told, you'll hear from us. And when you hear something like that, it's basically, if you remember asking your parents for something and they go, we'll see, it's always a no, right? Always a no. That's pretty much what I thought was that, well, I must have screwed up because they gave me that. 2 months go by and I'm I'm dozing off on the couch and I decide to go into the room to take a nap. And my grandmother, who speaks barely any English, kicks in the door basically to the room that I'm in and starts yelling at me in Spanish. And she's yelling, los policías están aquí. ¿Qué hiciste? Which is, the police are here. The police are here. What did you do? And I said, I don't know. I was like, I was out with my cousins last night. Oh my Lord, did something happen that I don't know? Like, that I don't remember? And she's like, you need to get out there and figure out what it is that's going on. So I go, and it's the chief of police. It's Chief Bird. And he says, hello, of course. I shake his hand and everything, and ask what's going on. Like, what's up? I don't what's going on here. And he says, well, I just wanted to stop by because, as I said, this is frost proof. This is a small city, man. Everyone knew the chief. The chief knew everyone. It was not really a blink and you miss it, but it was kind of a blink and you miss it. I mean, you've got 2 traffic lights, a McDonald's, a bank, a school, a church. It's a pretty small town. So he's there, and he says, I just wanted to stop by to see if you still wanted the job. And I said, what? Really? It's been 2 months. I didn't even think I made it. And he goes, well, and there's a lot more to the story as well. I'm keeping it. I want to move through. So if you have heard this story, if you've been in my class or heard my keynote or whichever, there's way more to this. But he says, no, our background process is pretty long. So do you still want the job? And I said, yeah, of course. Now, I want you to think about the times that you started a new job, whatever job that might be. A lot of times you start the following week, right? Well, that's not what happened here. I thought I was going to be starting the following week as well. Nope. I asked him, so when do I start? Do I start like next week or something? And he goes, nope, you start tonight. Huh? It's exactly what, yeah. What? I said, are you serious? Tonight? Like tonight? And he goes, you want the job, don't you? And I said, well, yes, I do. I just didn't think that I was going to be starting tonight. And he goes, yeah, you're working the midnight shift. So my shift was going to be 10 at night to 6 in the morning. This is also the first time I've ever done a midnight shift before. So a lot of firsts. First time working in public safety, in 911, but also my first midnight shift. So it's like, welcome to Frostproof PD. That's basically what it was like. And he left. And I go inside, and my grandmother's standing there looking at me, and I tell her what it was, and she just kind of laughs at me, and she goes, well, you should probably go take that nap then, huh? And I said, yeah, I will. So that night I go in and I meet my trainer, and my trainer's name was Harry. And I will say that he was a very seasoned dispatcher, very seasoned, slightly crusty, but a very cool guy, very cool. And he showed me everything that was there. I mean, this is 2001, okay? And we had this enormous radio with a gooseneck microphone where you had to punch in like a 5-digit code just to get the tones to go off for fire. I mean, they were literally across the street. I could have just stood outside the door by the records clerk's office and yelled out, "Hey, we got a call." So he's showing me everything. And 911 goes off. And I swear it was like Shark Week, man. It was like I was dialed into watching something on National Geographic because I was just so into it. I'm watching Harry take this 911 call. I've never been on this side before, so I'm fascinated. I'm dialed in. I'm watching. I'm listening. And when he's done, I applauded him. I said, "Well done, Harry." And he's like, I remember the look on his face as he's putting the phone down. He's like, "Oh, thank you. We don't get a lot of applause in 911." And he goes, "Well, you're next." What? And I remember being almost immediately freaked out because this is my first night. I've only been there like 20, 25 minutes. 911 has gone off. I watched Harry take a call, and now it's my turn. And I remember throwing my hands out at him and saying, "That's it? There's nothing else? There's no other training. Are you serious right now? I've never done this before." And he goes, "Listen, the only way you are going to learn how to do this is by doing it. You learn on the job. Plus, there are only 3 things that you need in order to do this job, in order to be in this profession. First, you have to have thick skin. Second, you have to have common sense. And finally, you have to be human." Now, those first 2, right? Those are basic, but man, that third one, from that time all the way up to today, May 1st, 2025, you have to be human. Damn. That one is deep. Because you have to think about what you're doing. You are a voice. Not just a voice. You are a powerful voice. These people are calling while they're living through their literal worst nightmare and putting trust in your voice to help them. That's a lot of pressure. But also, that's this profession. That's what we do. And it is our job to stay calm, even though in the back of our minds, we are freaking out just like you because we are human. But it's up to us to keep you calm, to be empaths, to put ourselves in your shoes in order to quickly figure out what is going on and the type of help that you need in seconds, in those moments. Build that rapport, to build that trust with you, the caller, so that we can get help out there to you. And sometimes we are juggling everything. It's triage, especially if there's tons of calls coming in and you are the one who is taking every single one, while also at the same time typing, talking on the radio, and maybe if there's other people that you're working with, yelling over to get them information even faster. Or you're just simply talking out loud so that your team can hear you and they know what it is that you're working on. But for me, I'm alone. I'm one person working there. Now, technically 2 because I'm with my trainer, Harry. But I want you to imagine what is going on and what you're doing, how important it is, but especially that human factor. moving quickly, connecting, and being that powerful voice. Saying it out loud like that, how crazy does that sound? But also, how awesome is that? Not a lot of people can do this. So here I am now, 25 minutes or so worth of training. And now the next 911 call is all me. And I'm sweating because I don't know what's going to come in. No one ever knows what's going to come in. And I'm freaking out. And I'm sitting there waiting as Harry's telling me other things, policies, procedures, whatever. And then the phone rings. And now it's my turn. Frostproof 911, where's your emergency? And it was a butt dial. Oh my God. Thank the Lord. Holy crap. The lady who's on the phone, she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to call you." And in the back of my mind, I'm like, "No, lady, you have no idea. Thank you for for that, because I was freaking out, man. And I got her information or whatever, and did what I had to do, and I hang up as I'm just a sigh of relief. And I turn over and look at Harry, and he's kind of chuckling, and he goes, "You got the first one down." Welcome to dispatch, baby. Oh man, what a crazy thing. Now, about a week or so later, I did have a 40-hour beginner's dispatch course that I did in Auburn, Florida. Or Auburndale, rather. I'm sorry, Auburndale. It was in Auburndale. And I learned a lot there as well. But man, right off the bat in the beginning, that's what it was like. Just whoop, threw me into the fire, man. That's how it was. And that's how it was for a lot of us. There's so much more now that training, and in some certain states, there's an academy that you have to go through. Like, there are so many other things now, so many more resources and such. But in the beginning, for me, that's what it was like. So I feel as though, for a lot of us, and those of you who are watching and listening to this right now, you know where I'm going with this, but also, I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't know where this goes along with my story, but you're about to find out. Because I feel like a lot of times when we are done training, that first night on our own, that's when everything goes to hell. And that's how it was for me too. In the sense that, I'm taking phone calls, right? Whether it be on the handset or the headset, I'm taking phone calls. So my very first call, or hard call, I thought was going to be on the phone, because that's what I'm doing. But it wasn't. It was right in front of my face. Because that first night, the chief is getting ready to leave. And he says to me, "Do you think you got this?" And I said, "Man, I got you. Don't worry. Besides, if you hear me in trouble, I know you'll be here, because I know you're always listening to the scanner." And he chuckled and he goes, "You know what? You're right. You know me well." I said, "Yeah, I do." So he's getting ready to go. And we hear a car screech up. Now, people were able to come to the police department, walk in, and file complaints there. People didn't always call. They would sometimes show up face to face. And if we had an officer in there, they would come out and sit with them in the lobby, take the complaint or whichever, and then go do what they had to do. Or if the officer was out on the road, then they would come in. Or maybe the sergeant would take the initial information and they would meet up later with the officer. So the car screeches up and we hear this. We're both alert, at attention as to whatever we're about to encounter. We hear the door open to the car and a woman is screaming as she's coming out of the car. The door slams and then the door opens to the PD and she runs in. Now, as I said, everyone knew the chief and the chief knew everyone. And as she's yelling, he kind of grabs her by the arms to stabilize her because she is just flailing. She's hysterical as she's yelling, "I found him. I found him." And already in my head, I'm trying to process what's going on because this is right in front of my face. Again, not anything that I expected because I'm there taking calls. And what happened was, and this occurred just across the street from the police department. But what happened was this lady and her husband had been separated. And they were trying to figure out whether or not they were going to continue their marriage. And she decided, yes, I want to continue. You know, they had kids and everything, and she wanted to make it work. But when she got to the house, she found that her husband had hung himself. He was gone. So I already had everyone heading over there to the house. She sits down in the lobby, and the chief heads over as well. So now she's sitting in the lobby, and I'm on the other side of the glass, right by my console. And I'm standing there. I'm not sitting, I'm standing there, trying to process all this, answering the radio, answering any other calls that are coming in. But I see her sitting there just crying. So what do you do? Well, that's where that third thing comes in that Harry was telling me about. The human part. You be human. So I go into the lobby and I sit down next to her. And I asked her something that probably a lot of you who are watching and listening to this right now have done before with callers as well. And I asked, is there anyone that you would like me to call for you? And she said, yes. So I called some family for her. They showed up. They were sitting with her, and I'm back over by my console. After a little while, they leave. And I'm alone. Phone's not ringing. There's no radio traffic. I'm just sitting there trying to process this. Because this is the first for me. And also, at this time, no one's talking about mental health and wellness. No one is talking about resilience. There are no resources for dispatch. And in my beginner's course and at the PD a little bit, it was just kind of talked about like there's going to be some stuff that you're going to hear. And you got to work through it or you move to the next one. You know, there wasn't any deep conversations like we have now. So I'm sitting there trying to process this like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. The chief returns The officer that was out there, the main officer, he returns as well, and I see that he has the suicide note, and he's standing next to me. And for those who are watching and listening that are from the general public who don't know, one of the biggest things that we deal with in 911 is not getting any closure. I mean, sometimes you do, sometimes, but a lot of times you don't. And that's one of the hardest parts of this profession is not getting that closure. It's a lot different now because more and more people know what 911 professionals deal with. So a lot of times people will go out of their way to give that gift of closure because they now know how it impacts us when we don't know about these things. So I'm trying to process all of this. And for whatever reason, like I knew what happened, right? But this was the first time I'm ever dealing with this, and I needed something more. I guess I needed a little more closure. So I kept trying to look over at the note. For whatever reason, I just wanted to know where that person was, or what brought them to that, what they had said. And the officer saw that I was trying to see it. And he asks me if I want to read it. And I said yes. Basically, what it said was that he could no longer live without his wife and kids. And that they wished, or he wished rather, that they could have made it work because he wanted them or wanted to be with them. He wanted it to work. And obviously, I don't know what the time was between when he did what he did and when his wife found him. But to this day, all I think about is, if you could have waited just a little bit longer, maybe I wouldn't be sharing this story today. But I shared the story and will continue to share this story because it was the first time that I dealt with something like that. And if my story can help others who have dealt with something similar, I'm going to continue to share it. Plus, it's therapeutic for me as well. It continues to be able to share the story. And it is my hope that that person, along with his wife, kids, and family, that they ultimately found some sort of peace. And I was a part of that with them. So I ended up staying there for about 4 years or so. And then I ended up moving back to Southwest Michigan. But what I want to say here really quick as I close this part of the beginning of my dispatch career leading to this episode 600 is just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Florida. And I was there for the 2025 Navigator Conference that was in Orlando. Every time I go back to Florida to visit family or to be out there for a conference or for whatever work I'm doing, not only do I hang out with my family there, but I go back to Frostproof PD, or at least where it used to be, where that plot of land is. And I stand there and I just reflect because I don't ever want to forget where I started. It's where everything that I do began. And I will look across the street to where that house was, where it's now just land. And again, I hope that they all found peace. The chief and I have kept in contact through social media. But up until just a couple weeks ago, I had not seen him face to face since I left over 10 years ago. Again, we've been on social media, but not face to face. 2 weeks ago, I was at a restaurant for breakfast with my family. And I saw a person walking in, and it was just peripheral. And I just kind of looked and I thought, I think that's the chief. I think that's my chief. And sure enough, it was. He was having breakfast with his wife. And my mom was like, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And I said, "I think I just saw someone and I need to get up and go and speak to this person." And she goes, "Okay." And I get up and I start walking towards the chief. And I just have the biggest freaking smile on my face. And he looks up, smiles, looks down, looks up again, and looks forward and gets a big smile on his face. And I'm like, "Chief?" And he goes, "Hey, man." And we shook hands, we hugged, and we spoke for just a little bit. And it was an amazing moment because, again, I had not seen him in over 10 years. And while we were there talking, I'm telling him that, I'm going to I just wanted to be brief. I just wanted to say hello, and I'll let them get back to their breakfast, but I couldn't leave without saying thank you for giving me a shot. And because of him and everyone else, I got my start in public safety, and I've been in it for over 20 years now. And I told him I will be forever grateful to him for giving me a chance. And he he chuckled and he goes, "Well, I'm proud of you. You've really made something of yourself in this." And I about lost it. I about lost it. Oh my God. So again, thank you, Chief, for everything. It was a really cool moment a couple of weeks ago to see you and your wife and just to be able to talk to you for a little bit. But again, I will be forever grateful to you for giving me a chance. A lot has happened. So we move on. I go back to Michigan. I finish off my career at Allegan County Central Dispatch. And during that time, like a lot of us, I ended up going into a burnout. In 2007, I took a phone call that really pushed me into trying to figure out me because I was one of those dispatchers who buried their calls. I thought I was leaving it at work, which is bullshit. You can say it all you want that you leave it at work. Stop lying to yourself. That's what I had to tell myself, looking in the mirror, and no one wants to look in the mirror and realize you might have an issue or you might have some things that you have to work out as well. We all do. It's just how you respond to it, how you're able to evolve and move forward. And for me, after taking that specific call, a call that had to do or that dealt with my grandmother when she passed away, I took that call And it really pushed me into trying to figure out me, because for a long time I was scared. Not scared of the calls, not scared of the work I was doing, scared of the people that I worked with. And what I mean is their judgment. I was scared of their judgment. That if I started talking about what I do, that if I was asking for help or whatever, I mean, don't get me wrong, we would talk about some of the calls, but it was never in the sense of healing or peer support. It was just we were just talking and then moving on. But there was something deeper. And I think we all knew it. I think a lot of people know it, but there's that fear of judgment that if there's anything deeper, that people might think that you can't hack it. And that's where I was. But after that call and everything that I was dealing with at that time, it was time to start figuring things out. For me, I went back to school. I ended up getting 3 degrees, and that's not a flex. I'm not saying that as a flex. It was really me throwing myself into work as well because of what I was dealing with a lot of the calls. But I finally stopped caring about people thinking that I couldn't hack it. And I started doing a bunch of projects that had to do with public safety, that had to do with 911, because for a long time I would get annoyed when people would say, well, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Like a lot of you. Because I would think, why are these people wanting me to relive some of that horrible shit? But that was in my head. I was lying to myself. Because these people weren't trying to make me relive that. And if that's what you're thinking as well, when people ask you, your brain is lying to you. You're lying to yourself, because that is not what it is. It took me a long time to figure a lot of this stuff out, which is why I share it, because I want you to understand as well that people are not trying to make you relive certain things. It's because people are fascinated with what you do. It's that curiosity. As humans, we are curious. I mean, why do you think true crime is such a big thing? I know you watch it. Some of you watch it when you're going to sleep. People are just fascinated. I would go to get my hair cut and people would ask. And I told one person once, and we locked eyes, and I saw that that person was feeling it just like I was feeling it. And that was at that point where I thought, I'm never going to do that again. Because now they were feeling that same thing. So now, when people ask, what's the worst call, when I talk about what I did for a living, and you can use this as well. You can do the same thing. Switch your mindset, because that's what I did. I switched my mindset because I realized that people just don't know what it is that we do. And they want to understand. And if that's going to help them also be a better caller, damn it, I'm going to tell them. But I'm going to do it in the sense of public education. And that's how I switched my mindset, to do it that way. So now when people would ask, so what's the worst call you've ever taken? I would just tell them, I've taken calls that would give you nightmares, because that's what happened to me. But I can give you a funny or an outrageous call instead. Like funny, crazy, like what? And the majority of the time, pretty much every time that I've done that, people end up saying, yes, that's what I want to know. That's what I want to hear. And then, I share a story with them. There's a power in storytelling. I found that out early on. So when I'm in school and I'm doing all of these different things, I start sharing stories and talking about what we're doing in 911. And in 2010, during my bachelor's program, I ended up doing a project. It was digital storytelling, but it was about dispatch. And the same questions basically that I asked in that video, excuse me, to my coworkers were the same ones that I asked today. And this is episode 600. This is like 2.5 years prior to the podcast that this project happened. And I want to share that with you now. At that time, I had my coworkers, Alexis and Trista, help me with this. And they were all about it. They're like, yeah, let's do this. I said, because people need to know what it is that we actually go through, what we hear. These are important stories. Now, what I wanted to do was play this, but when I did this originally, there was music in the background. Now, that music has a copyright. And if I were to add this to this, there would be it would get blocked. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the link into the description as well as the blog post and all of that so that you can view the video for yourselves. Because this is going to be live on social media and such, and it will get blocked. And I don't want it to get blocked or anything, but it is an excellent video, and it's how everything started out for Within the Trenches, because this just it led to everything. It's how I knew that I actually had something. And this right here are my good friends, Alexis on the left and Trista on the right. And I will be forever grateful to the both of you for doing this with me. Because again, this is how it started. It started with this digital storytelling, and it was also a blog. Within the Trenches started as a written segment where I started sharing my stories, my calls. And my professor and my classmates were blown away by the raw storytelling from both of my friends here. And a lot of them just kept saying, I had no idea. I thought you guys just answered phone calls and sent them out. I didn't realize that there was so much that goes into it. And I know I had something. Also, as I said, it started out as a blog. So between the video and the blog, it just started to build and roll through. But again, to Alexis and Trista, thank you very much. That was in 2010. The earliest version of what I do for a living. From the podcast to the I Am 911 movement to Imagine Listening to, all of it. It was the first version. So please make sure to check that out. And again, thank you, Alexis and Trista. But it's what started it all. And by sharing all of that, it was also therapeutic. Very therapeutic. And once I was done with my bachelor's program, I ended up going literally right into my master's program for new media journalism. And they introduced us to podcasting. And I fell in love with that form of storytelling. And I thought, if I can get dispatchers to come on and lend their voice, it'll make it that much more powerful. So now we fast forward to the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, and I launch Within the Trenches, True Stories from the 911 Dispatchers Who Lived Them. And my first guest was one of my teammates, one of my coworkers. I was a supervisor at the time, and she was on my team, and her name is Whitney. What I want to do here is I want to share with you, I'm going to put this picture up on the screen really quick. And for those who are simply listening to the audio right now, the picture that is on the screen is a picture of Whitney sitting at a console. And it has my original OG Within the Trenches logo on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the first 5 minutes of episode 1. All right, here we go. Here it is. I will say this right off the bat. If you just heard that right now, you heard me on one side and you're going to hear her on the other side, because as I said in the beginning, I was testing and recording things on my laptop and just my Apple headset. I ended up later on getting this huge speaker. Okay. It was a big speaker that had two XLR ports for microphones, but it was only mono audio, which is why you hear us on separate channels. It wasn't stereo. That's why I said, if you are starting at the beginning, hang in there, because the audio gets
what's
better.
Going on?
So,
this is
all right,
Ricardo
here we
with
go.
Jabberlog on the Jcast, and I'm sitting here with Whitney, and this is episode 1 of Within the Trenches. How's it going?
Hey guys, everybody! Thanks for joining us.
With this project, it all started out. Just give you a rundown here really quick for those who don't know. I know a lot of you have been seeing posts that I've been doing lately, promoting, trying to get this kickstarted and up off the ground. But it originally started as a segment off of my blog, Jabberlog, Within the Trenches, and it was based on my experience as a 911 operator. And what I wanted to do was do a little more with the segment and turn it into a podcast. So I started a Kickstarter project, which once I post everything up after this episode, I will also post up all the information for that. But what the show is supposed to be about is to give, everybody, the general public, a better idea of what we do as 911 dispatchers. What do you think, Whit? What do you think these people are going to think about, some of the stuff that we're going to talk about, the calls, our experience, everything that we do?
I think it's going to be kind of a roller coaster ride for everybody. I think there's going to be a lot of funny on here, but I think there's going to be some sad stuff too that people are going to look at it and say, man, you take that home at night. We have to live with some of these calls and the outcomes of them too. But there's definitely some funny that, if you're not sitting in a room with a big group of people, nobody really gets to appreciate some of the calls that you think, is this real life? Did I really just take that call?
Yeah, I remember one of my former coworkers. She had taken a call from an elderly gentleman who he called up, and he was living in the northwestern area of the county that we work in, which is Allegan County, and he just sounded so embarrassed. And she said, "What's going on? What's going on?" And he says, "Ma'am, there's a guy who's walking naked on stilts past my my window here." And it's one of those calls that when you tell people what you do for a living and they ask you what's the funniest call you've ever taken, that's definitely one of them, because that's one of the things that we deal with. We take a lot of funny calls.
You're right. And it's actually fortunate that we can look back and say we take a lot of funny calls, because there are some jurisdictions that I'm sure they have funny calls, but they have a lot of real nasty calls they get.
Of course. Yeah.
So, thanks Allegan County for keeping us on our toes. We never quite know what we're going to get on the other end of that phone call. We appreciate that.
Oh yes, definitely. It's always a good time, and it even, and like I said, one of the things I'm hoping that with this show that people will understand us more. We're not just that voice. We're more than that on the other side of the phone. Because there's a lot that we deal with. And I know when I talk to people and I've said, or they'll say, so how was work? I was like, well, it was kind of boring. And then they just stare at me like, you're so evil and cynical. And it's
Right.
like, no, I don't want people to get hurt, but it's good that people aren't calling because I know they're safe. But I also enjoy the fact that I'm there to help them. So, it's that dark humor that people don't understand that I'm hoping they'll be able to understand from what we're doing here today.
Right, exposing us in kind of that quiet way through a little podcast and not
Yes.
having to make front page of the paper.
Exactly.
Be on the news.
Yeah. That's another thing. Another reason why I wanted to do this, because, a lot of the time people, when they hear stuff about dispatch or whatever, it's always a call that comes out that was bad or, and they're crucifying us. And there's a lot more to the story that the news, doesn't always put out there. So there's probably a lot of times that those calls, that they put out there that, the dispatcher didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
It's the frantic caller that, possibly didn't give them the right address, or they called 2 hours after the incident happened, and we always get hit on it. So I'm hoping that with this we can shed some light on a lot of things.
On a lot of things, I
Yeah.
agree.
So that that's just the first 5 minutes or so of of episode 1. Episode 1, and this is episode 600. Wow. I love it though, because everything that I'm saying there, that Whitney and I are talking about, it's exactly what I wanted this to be about. And it is what it ended up being and continues to be. There's a lot of evolution, right? There's a lot of different things that has happened, but man, was it so much fun. That first episode. And when I got to episode 5, so many people had heard Whitney and I together that they said to me, you should make her your co-host. And I said, you know what? I love the idea. I asked her and she said yes, that she would do it. And then she said, what do I need to do? What do you need me to do? And I said, you need to be in dispatch tomorrow at 2 p.m. Actually, just before 2 p.m. because WZZM, an ABC affiliate, WZZM 13, was going to be at our dispatch center because they wanted to do a story on what I was doing and what Whitney was a part of. And I said, you need to wear your Within the Trenches t-shirt too. And she's like, I'm in. Okay, let's do it. And it was awesome to have WZZM there. I want to play this for you really quick. It's a short segment as we continue to reflect just on everything that has happened with this podcast.
911, where's your emergency?
It's a call you hope you never have to make.
Okay, what street are you off of?
But if you ever do, you're grateful when that 911 dispatcher picks up the phone line.
Because I know that I might be that voice on the other end for a screaming mother, an abused wife.
It's a tough, often stressful job, and one many of us truly don't understand. That motivated Allegan County dispatcher Ricardo Martinez to launch his new internet radio show, Within the Trenches.
The public will be able to finally see, wow, now I know what they actually go through while they're taking a call.
Martinez and co-host Whitney Wisner share stories about the wide variety of calls they handle, from those that are a matter of life and death to those a little less serious.
We actually do get calls where cats are stuck in a tree and they want us to go help them, or they'll call a 911 for fireworks or parade times.
It is exciting to give our story, but it is also nerve-wracking. Like Ricardo said, you don't ever want the public to think, well, here they go. They're going to tell these awful stories.
This day, I sat in as a guest on the show to see up close and personal what it's all about.
That's how our brains work. We're talking about news releases and how you get them, and then all of a sudden I just take it to
Back to crap.
The banter toggles between the humorous to the serious, but it's always informative.
Because people don't call 911 all the time. So the one or two times they do in their life, we just want them to know what's going on our side.
Because I want people to know why we are putting them on hold. You know, they'll be calling in with a medical, you know, someone's having a heart attack, but we have to put them on hold in order to page out the ambulance. But people don't always understand that.
And in a big way, this show is therapeutic for the dispatchers who rarely get closure after a call.
I'm giving CPR instructions, and the ambulance gets there. I don't know what's going to happen. They end up going to the hospital, and then, you know, we wonder. But we go right to the next call.
Within the Trenches is a sort of reality radio, but about real issues that matter.
You go home and you feel not satisfied, but you feel accomplished. Like I was really able to do what the citizens of Allegan County expected from me today.
So that, again, was the segment that WZZM 13 did, and very, very grateful to them for that as well. Thank you for coming out, doing a segment on the podcast and what I was doing there with my co-host Whitney and stuff. And it was amazing. And, you know, about 4 months or so later, I left 911. Well, not exactly. I left the dispatch center. I was given an opportunity to go to the private side of 911. And it wasn't an easy thing to do. The podcast picked up even more. It kept going and going. And I spoke at the Michigan NINA conference talking about what it is that I was doing with sharing stories. Jerry Tapper, the late Jerry Tapper, had reached out to my deputy director, and because she had heard about what I was doing. She saw the segment, and she said that I needed to speak at the conference. And I remember when I was approached, I thought, I'm not a public speaker. I don't do that. I don't think I can do that. And they said, they just want you to share your story and maybe record some episodes there at the conference. So I did. And I will be forever grateful to you, Jerry, for that introduction, because that's how I got my start with Nina and going to conferences and doing what I do. It's because you believed in it that much. You believed in me, what I was doing. And I remember every time I saw you and I would thank you, and you would tell me, no, you don't have to thank me. I just gave a little nudge. You're the one doing all the work. Don't stop, because these are stories that need to get out there. People need to know, and you're doing it. There have been many people who have told me, don't stop. And I haven't stopped. And I won't. I will continue to share these stories. So again, thank you, Jerry. The sponsor for this podcast and digital, they're the ones who found me through the podcast and plucked me out of dispatch. Again, it wasn't an easy decision. And when I did, my last day in dispatch was in true dispatch form, a 16-hour shift. The person who was supposed to relieve me for my 1P to 1A shift, they called in sick. And I remember my teammates, Whitney and Jill, asking me if I was going to go down the list for overtime. And I said, no. I said, I'm volunteering it. I am going to take it. Because I wanted to finish with my team. I was there already. It was my last shift. I wasn't going to make somebody come in. I wanted to be there. And that last night, I remember there was not much time left, but I said to my coworkers, I said, there is one call, one type of call that I have not ever had the chance to take. And they said, don't say it because you're going to put it out there in the universe and it's going to happen. I said, no, there is no way in hell that this could ever happen. And they said, okay, say it. And I said, I've never taken a medical where I had to translate in Spanish. And I laughed and they laughed. And I shit you not, a little while later, the phone rings and I hear my teammate, Jill, say, un momento, and put them on hold. And I look over at Whitney and she looks at me and she's like, you see? And I was like, no way. No way. Like, this is not happening. So then Jill stands up and she's like, Ricardo, and she's just busting up laughing. And I thought, oh, okay. It's, she probably had an officer call in, and they were just messing with me. And I said, you're just messing with me, right? And she goes, no, I'm serious. You need to pick up the phone. And sure enough, it was a medical that I had to translate in Spanish. Now, this happened in seconds. We weren't taking, that much time. It happened it was really fast. The person he only spoke Spanish, but he didn't know where he was at. Luckily, he was in an area that I had actually grew up in. So I knew exactly where he was. But he was at a house with all of his friends. Everyone was passed out drunk. He was intoxicated as well. And he was having trouble breathing. They didn't transport or anything. He was having a panic attack and told them, you don't need to transport me. I feel fine. Like, it ended up being nothing. But, dude, you put it out there in the universe, it's gonna happen, especially in dispatch. So I want to play something for you here really quick. This was from that night. And I again, forever grateful to Whitney for a lot of things. But she recorded this, and I didn't realize she was recording it at the time until afterwards. But this right here is my final transmission. And it's May 1st right now, July 22nd, which is also my dad's birthday, will be my 12-year anniversary of this night, of my last night in dispatch. But I will say as well, what you're going to hear is a and giggity, because when there was nothing going on the radio, an officer would sometimes key up and just sniff on the radio. It sounds so stupid, but it was funny. And I would key back up and go, and I would sniff as well. Or we'd key up and you would hear, and I would make the noise. Or we would say meow, or sometimes giggity, just playing around on the radio again when nothing was going on. So the reason I say that is because I say that in my final transmission. So here it is.
Alien Central to all stations and units. My 8 years here has come to an end now. It has been an excellent experience. Giggity and Godspeed. It's been a pleasure and an honor working with all of you. I'm out. Over 20. 420. Hoorah! I know. Oh, where do you start?
So there you have it. That was my final transmission. I was getting a little choked up right at the end when I said I'm out. Or no, when I say it's been an honor working with all of you, and I'm out. Like, I was getting emotional right there, and if I had gone any longer, I would have lost it. But it was an awesome night and an excellent final shift with Whitney and Jill. And I thank you both for everything. Everything. Whitney stayed with me as the co-host until probably about episode 40 or 43, something like that. And I ended up moving out here to Indiana. She remained over in Michigan. And as I said earlier, she's now the deputy director, or has been the deputy director for years now there at Allegan. And dude, I am so proud of you. Very proud of you. And I would just be forever grateful to everyone there, and especially my childhood friend, Megan. I love you, Meg. Thank you as well for so much. And Chris, and just so many people. It has been a crazy journey. Because I end up leaving and I go to work for InDigital, and fast forward to 2016 to when I launch the I Am 911 movement. It was a movement that I started to fight for the reclassification of 911 professionals. But what started out as that, and still is used for that, quickly turned into peer support. We all realized we were not only struggling in a similar way, but that we all felt alone. But after sharing all of these stories, reading these stories from 911 professionals around the world, we realized we were not alone. And it was therapeutic. And we were able to find some sort of closure and healing through the power of storytelling. From that comes Imagine Listening, a peer support session where dispatchers would share their stories. The first 30 minutes is emotionally intense, but then the last part of it is open mic, and that's where we share the funny shit that happens in 911. Now I'm going to save that portion because I'm going to do this instead. I'm going to play something for you. Imagine listening to someone's worst day every single day. Imagine listening as someone experiences life through their worst nightmare to the miracle of birth or a life saved. I'm Ricardo Martinez, a former 911 dispatcher, and for years, I've been recording the voices of a hidden world, ours. I've provided a space for 911 dispatchers to share their powerful stories. It started as a peer support session and continues. Dispatchers sitting together, sharing out loud, or writing down what they couldn't say. Some stories will grip you. Stories of heartbreak, resilience, and calls that haunt us long after the line goes quiet. But Imagine Listening is more than heavy emotion. It's about healing. It's about laughing through the chaos, lifting each other up, and reminding the world that dispatchers are human too. The lighthearted will balance the heavy. Experience the power of storytelling, a podcast for the thin gold line and those who want to understand it. This is Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. So there you have it. The continuation, or at least that portion that I was just talking about. Imagine Listening, the I Am 911 movement, will continue in episode 1 of the Imagine Listening podcast. I am very excited for that portion of it because, as I mentioned in the beginning, Within the Trenches podcast will always remain the podcast sharing stories, but in an interview type piece of storytelling. There's a lot that you learn from this. And although I have had segments or episodes rather that were presenting some of those Imagine Listening sessions, those will now be separated. As I said, we continue to evolve. So many good things are coming. So now you will have the OG Within the Trenches podcast and a new separate podcast for Imagine Listening and the open mic portions of that as well. So the continuation of the story will be in episode 1 of Imagine Listening, where we will highlight some of those pieces and how Imagine Listening started. We'll play some audio from those very first episodes because there are 8.5 years worth of content, but also about 1.5 years worth of recent Imagine Listening sessions that will be going in. So it'll be classic, or rather new, and then classic episodes. New, classic, new, classic. But either way, it'll be all stories. And I'm excited for all of that. Again, this is the evolution. And I love that I'm able to talk about this here on episode 600. Again, something I never thought was going to happen in the beginning. But we have now talked about the beginning, what happened in the middle, and what's coming in the future, what's to come. Because also, I've been traveling around teaching a communications course, a back to basics on communication, because I'm a firm believer that sometimes we have to go back to basics to be able to move forward. And part of that course as well is Imagine Listening. I've been teaching that for almost 2 years now, and it has been amazing. But as I go into the wrap up of this episode, this epic episode 600, just wanted to take some time to take you back and reflect on how all of this started. 600 episodes, 600 hours worth of powerful dispatch stories from the most vital piece of public safety, the first responders. The first responders of 911. And they're from all over the world. And it'll continue. You know, for a while I thought, where will this end up going? Will it end? When will it end? This is episode 600. I thought maybe I'll end this at episode 1000. But then I thought it would be more poetic to end it at episode 911. But I don't know. I feel like it'll just continue going. We'll just continue sharing story after story because they're important. People have learned so much. There are people who have sent in messages saying that the reason they started in 911 was because of this podcast, because of the stories they heard, that they wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And some of them saying thank you. And I'm now 2 months into my training and I love it. It's amazing. That is that power of storytelling that I've been telling you about. Also finding some form of closure and healing through that power of storytelling. We've done a lot here, and we are going to continue. Because as I said before, it's all about that evolution, moving forward. I don't like staying in the same place. I like doing new, cool shit all the time. which is why you see me doing so many things, working with so many awesome people. And who knows, maybe there's an awesome partnership coming up as well. But you have to stay tuned. So, thank you all who have helped me get here. For all of you who do what you do in this profession, because I seriously wouldn't be where I am without all of you. I might be the mouthpiece, the voice, but if it wasn't for your courage to share your stories, this wouldn't be what it is today. So thank you, all of you. I appreciate you more than you know. And here is to many, 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 many more episodes to come, because this has been an amazing experience. An amazing journey. And again, I wouldn't change it, because so many things have come out of it. And I am looking forward to the future and everything that is coming up, and to be able to share with you what is coming up as well. But I also hope that you will check out Imagine Listening and everything that's going to come from that as well. Oh, it's so exciting. But again, it wouldn't be what it is without all of you. So thank you. This episode has been sponsored by In Digital, a leader next gen core services, and a big shout out to subscribers. As always, thank you very, very much for everything, but also all of you who are here watching, supporting, listening, sharing, all of it. Thank you. Thank you. I know I keep saying it, but damn it, thank you. Thank you. If you ever want to be a guest on this show, which I would love to have you, whether you are new, seasoned, or retired, I would love to share your story. I've been doing this for over a decade. It is my passion. I didn't just jump into this. There's a lot of hard work that went into this all these years. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of battling with, am I doing the right thing? It was just so much stuff, just everything, It wasn't as easy as it is today for people to get into creating content, creating a podcast, sharing stories, or whatever. It was a lot of grind. And I'm doing it, and I will continue. This can be seen. Well, let me finish my other thought first. If you want to be on, because it would be an honor to have you, and I would love to share your story, and also all of your trust in me to share your stories. Thank you for that as well. I don't take that lightly. When I say it's an honor, it truly is an honor to speak with every single one of you, or meet you at conferences or anything like that. You can simply go to links.co/WTT podcast, and that's links with 2i's.co/WTT podcast. You'll find everything there. You'll find my email, all of my social media, where to follow, where to hear the latest episode, where to pick up the Imagine Listening books. There will be a link for the new Imagine Listening podcast added there as well. There's also a link there so that you can go to a free community that I've built called The Trenches. We've got over 500 community members there, and there's so much more stuff that's going to be added to that. Also, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll find a link to the podcast merchandise and dispatch merchandise that you can pick up if you'd like to. Once again, that is links with 2i's.co/WTT podcast. And you can see this on Facebook, YouTube, as well as X and LinkedIn Live. I also share clips on Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, as well as TikTok. So find all of that there. You can find me on the personal accounts as well. lot of different things. I've separated myself from the podcast, some of the main podcast platforms like Instagram and TikTok, in order to be able to just keep the podcast clips on there, and the Imagine Listening and I Am 911 stories are part of my personal TikTok and personal Instagram, as well as LinkedIn. So make sure to check both of those out. Follow me there. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you for 600 episodes of just powerful stories from 911 professionals all over the world, and your support. This has been downloaded over 2.3. We're almost at 2.32 million downloads, and it's heard in over 60 countries. So thank you for all of that and everything that is coming in the future. Thank you. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.